I found a receipt in my jacket pocket from a store that burned down 27 years ago. My name is Marcus, and I need to tell you what happened because nobody believes me. This started 3 weeks ago on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was cleaning out my winter coat before putting it away for spring when I found a crumpled receipt wedged in the inside pocket. The paper was impossibly pristine. No water damage, no fading, no discoloration despite supposedly being decades old. The receipt was from Ashford's Grocery, Store 7. The date read March 14th, 1994, Target. I remembered Ashford's. It was the local grocery chain back when I was a kid. The chain collapsed in the mid-90s after a fire destroyed their distribution center. Store 7 had been located on Maple Street, just 3 blocks from where I live now. I'd driven past that lot 1,000 times. It's been a parking lot since 1995. But here's what made my skin crawl. The receipt listed items I'd purchased last Tuesday. Oat milk, salmon fillets, the exact brands I buy. The exact total was $47.23, the same transaction from 3 weeks prior. I called the phone number on the receipt. A woman answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. Her voice was quiet, almost mechanical. "Thank you for shopping at Ashford's," she said. I asked her how that was possible. She didn't answer the question. Instead, she asked me if I remembered my last visit. I told her I'd never shopped at Ashford's. I wasn't even born when that store burned down. "Yes, you were," she said. "You came in on March 14th, 1994. You bought the same items you always buy. You'll be back tomorrow." The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I took the receipt to the city records office and asked about Ashford Store 7. The clerk found the property file and confirmed the fire happened in 1994. She showed me a photograph of the charred storefront. But then her face went pale. In the background of that 1994 photograph, barely visible through the smoke, was a man in the parking lot. She zoomed in. It was me, exactly as I look now. Same face, same clothes I was wearing that day. I've been driving past that lot every day since. Last Thursday, I saw it. For just a moment, maybe 5 seconds, I watched as an Ashford store materialized over the parking lot. I could see the fluorescent lights through the windows. I could see the shopping carts. I could see customers moving around inside. Then it vanished. That night, another receipt appeared in my jacket. Same store, same date. But this time, the items purchased were from tomorrow's shopping list. Items I hadn't bought yet. Items I hadn't even planned for. The woman from the store called me again. She said I need to come back. She said everyone who gets the receipt has to come back eventually. She said I've been coming back every 27 years, and this time, I finally need to stay. I haven't left my house in 4 days. There's a receipt on my nightstand that appeared this morning, and I can hear the fluorescent hum of store lights coming from somewhere outside my walls. Tomorrow is March 14th again.
No signs of forced entry. The coroner ruled it a heart attack. Open and shut. Sarah signed off on it without much thought. But on the 3rd day, the lab called. They'd found fresh fingerprints on the victim's wrists and neck. Not from the time of death. They were fresh. New. The oils? Still present. The pressure patterns indicating they'd been pressed into the skin within the last 24 hours. Sarah drove back to the morgue. Thomas Hendricks lay in the cooler, pale and lifeless. She photographed the prints herself. They were deliberate, careful. Someone had placed their hands on a dead man's skin and gripped him. She ran the fingerprints through every database. Nothing. No criminal record. No government file. The prints didn't exist in any system. Then the fingerprints changed. The next day, the lab called again. Different prints. Same location on the wrists. Sarah examined them in person. Smaller hands this time. Different ridge patterns. Different pressure. Someone else had touched the body. Over the next week, 17 different sets of fingerprints appeared on Thomas Hendricks' remains. Each one new. Each one fresh. Each one impossible. Sarah visited the morgue every morning. She photographed each set. She ran each through the system. Nothing. None of them matched anything in the world. The coroner became nervous. He suggested the fingerprints were contamination. Lab error, cross-contamination from other bodies. But Sarah knew better. She'd run the tests herself. There was no mistake. On the 10th day, she arrived to find one more set of prints. But these ones she recognized. They were her own. Sarah's hands had been on Thomas Hendricks' wrists at some point during her investigation. She'd examined him. She'd moved his arms. Her prints should never have been fresh. Yet there they were, pressed into his skin like they'd been applied yesterday, the oils still wet. She pulled up the security footage from the morgue. Every door was sealed. Every entrance logged. No one had been in that room since the day before. The timestamp on the footage showed it clearly. The prints had appeared between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. 8 hours when no one was in the morgue but Thomas Hendricks. Sarah requested the case be reopened. She demanded an autopsy. The coroner refused. He said Thomas Hendricks had been dead for 11 days. He was being transferred for cremation. There was no point in further investigation. She never saw the body again. But the calls started coming. Other families. Other bodies. Fresh fingerprints appearing on their loved one's skin. Prints that didn't match anyone alive. Prints that changed daily. Prints that sometimes matched the investigators who'd handled their cases. Sarah requested a transfer. She couldn't work homicide anymore. She couldn't look at victims without wondering who was touching them in those dark hours when no one was watching. The final entry in her detective's log, dated 6 months later, simply read, "They're still touching them. And now I'm starting to wonder, are the fingerprints appearing on the dead, or are they appearing on us?" Sarah inherited her grandmother's house on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday night, the piano was playing songs that had never been written. The piano sat in the corner of the living room, a massive mahogany instrument that had belonged to her grandmother Margaret for 60 years. Sarah had attended countless recitals as a child, watching her grandmother's fingers dance across the keys with precision and grace. Margaret had passed away 3 weeks earlier, and the house fell to Sarah as her only surviving relative. The first night was quiet. Sarah explored the rooms, opened the windows, and tried to adjust to the weight of inheriting an entire life. She made tea in her grandmother's kitchen, slept in the guest bedroom, and told herself she'd deal with sorting through everything in the morning. It was around midnight when she heard it. A single note. Middle C. It hung in the darkness for 3 seconds, then faded. Sarah sat up in bed, listening. Nothing. She waited another minute before convincing herself it was the house settling, pipes groaning in the walls. Old houses made noise. That's what people said. But the next night it happened again. This time it wasn't one note. It was a melody. A slow, melancholy progression that Sarah recognized immediately. It was the same piece her grandmother had played at every funeral for the past 40 years. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The haunting composition that Margaret reserved for death. Sarah rushed downstairs and flicked on every light. The piano sat silent. The bench was empty. The lid was closed. There was no one there. She checked every door and window. Locked. She checked the attic. Empty. She checked the basement. Nothing but boxes and forgotten furniture gathering dust. By 3 in the morning, Sarah was sitting in her car in the driveway, engine running, wondering if grief and inheritance stress could cause auditory hallucinations. She convinced herself that's what it was. She went back inside, forced herself to sleep, and resolved to ignore any sounds the following night. The third night, it didn't matter. The music started at 9 o'clock in the evening. Not just the Nocturne anymore. Her grandmother was playing entire recitals. Classical pieces she'd performed decades ago. Concertos. Sonatas. movements that spanned hours. Sarah sat in the living room with all the lights on, watching the piano keys press down on their own, listening to the ghostly music that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. By the fourth night, something changed. The melodies became wrong. They twisted and contorted into shapes that music shouldn't take. Dissonant chords, rhythms that didn't align. It sounded like her grandmother was trying to tell her something, but the message was distorted, fragmented, almost like a scream filtered through a piano. Sarah found her grandmother's diary hidden in a drawer of the piano bench, something she'd never noticed before, though she'd opened that bench 100 times as a child. The entries dated back 50 years, and they all contained the same confession, written again and again in increasingly frantic handwriting. The notes won't stop. I hear them even when I'm not playing. They come from inside the walls. They come from inside my head. The piano knows what I did. The piano remembers. The final entry, dated the day before her grandmother's death, read, "When I'm gone, it will play for someone else. It will try to warn them. It will try to speak." That night, Sarah didn't turn on the lights. She sat in complete darkness and listened as the piano played the story of her grandmother's life through dissonant, tortured chords. Around 3 in the morning, the music stopped abruptly in the middle of a phrase, as if someone had lifted the lid and placed their hands gently on the keys, ready to continue but choosing silence instead. Sarah sold the house 2 days later. She didn't try to sell the piano. She contacted an antique dealer and had it destroyed. The demolition team reported that the wood inside was strange, not rotted but somehow hollow, as if something had been slowly carved away from within over decades. They found nothing inside but sawdust and the faint smell of lavender, her grandmother's signature scent. What Sarah never told anyone was what happened on the last night before she left. She sat at the piano one final time, placed her fingers on the keys, and without intending to, played a melody she'd never learned. The same melody her grandmother had played every night for the final week of her life. She played it perfectly, note for note, as if her hands knew something her mind did not. As her fingers moved across the keys, she understood. The piano wasn't haunted. It was a message, a warning written in sound that spanned decades. And now that warning was encoded in her muscle memory, waiting in her fingers, ready to pass to the next person who would inherit this house, ready to play again. I found a handful of old coins in my grandfather's desk after he died, and I've been finding them everywhere since, in places I never put them. My grandfather passed away on a Tuesday in March. The funeral was small. I inherited his oak desk, his watch, and a leather box containing 17 coins that didn't match any currency I recognized. Some were tarnished silver, others stamped with dates that made no sense. 1847, 1923, 1999, all mixed together. I kept them in a mason jar on my nightstand. 3 days later, I found one in my jacket pocket, a coin I'd never touched before, dated 1847. I pulled every coin from that pocket. It was the only thing there. I checked my laundry. Nothing. Nothing. That night, I found 3 more coins. One in my car's cup holder. One in my wallet, pressed between 2 20s. One sitting on top of my bathroom mirror, like it had been placed there deliberately. I tried to ignore it. Coincidence? Stress from the funeral? But the coins kept appearing. I'd locked them in the jar before bed. By morning, half would be gone, scattered across my apartment, under my pillow, in my shoes, inside a sealed envelope on my desk. They were spreading through my life like an infection. I called my cousin, who helped settle the estate. She said she'd found coins everywhere too, until she put them all back in the box and returned them to the lawyer. They stopped appearing after that, so I gathered every coin I could find. 17 of them. I put them back in the leather box and drove to my lawyer's office. I told him to keep them. I didn't care about them anymore. For 1 week, nothing happened. Then I found a single coin on my kitchen counter. The one dated 1999. Today's year, printed backward. I haven't slept much since then. I keep finding them. And each time I do, there's a new date on the coin. Tomorrow's date. Next week's date. Dates that haven't happened yet. Last night, I found one dated December 17th, 2027. That's the day my insurance expires. I don't know what my grandfather was collecting, or why they follow me, but I know what those dates mean. They're not random. They're counting down to something, and I'm running out of time to figure out why. My landlord discovered something impossible in his rent ledger, and it cost him everything. Marcus Webb had owned the Ashford Apartments for 32 years. He knew every tenant, every lease, every payment made on time or late. He was meticulous. His ledgers were perfect. Until the day he found a name that shouldn't exist. It started when he was organizing records for a tax audit. The year was 2019. He was cross-referencing payments when he noticed something odd. Unit 7C showed 2 separate rent payments in March. Same amount, same date, different check numbers. He pulled the original lease. The tenant had moved out in 2009. 10 years prior. Marcus figured it was a clerical error. He called the bank. The checks had cleared. Both of them. From the same account. Curious now, he dug deeper. That same tenant appeared again in 2015, paying 3 months of rent. Then again in 2017. And again in 2021. Always for Unit 7C, which had been empty for over a decade. Always with valid checks that successfully cleared. When he confronted the bank, they went pale. The account didn't exist anymore. The person had died in 2008. Marcus became obsessed. He pulled every file, every receipt, every deposit slip. What he discovered froze his blood. 17 different tenants, all deceased, had paid rent to him across multiple years. Some paid twice in 1 year. Some paid years after their deaths. The checks were legal. The signatures matched. The money was real. He called the police. They sent a detective who studied the ledgers for hours. The detective's hands shook as he handed them back. "Mr. Webb," he said quietly, "have you noticed the addresses on these checks?" Marcus hadn't. He looked now. Every single one was postmarked from a location that didn't exist. A street in the city that had never been built. An area that was, and had always been, a parking lot. That night, Marcus received an envelope. Inside was his own name. And a rent payment. For a property he'd never owned. For a year that hadn't happened yet. He never slept again. 3 months later, they found him in Unit 7C, the one that had been empty for 12 years. There was no sign of how he'd gotten in. The doors were locked from the outside, and on the table beside his body was a ledger. His ledger, from 10 years in the future. Every page was filled with names. His neighbors, his family, his own name repeated dozens of times. All of them had paid their rent in advance. Dr. Marcus Webb had been a dentist for 32 years, and in all that time, he'd never seen anything like the X-rays sitting on his lightbox. It was a Tuesday morning in March when the mail arrived. No return address. No note. Just a manila envelope containing 2 dental X-rays printed on old film. The kind they stopped using in 2003. The images showed a complete set of upper molars. Pristine. Perfect. Identical to the ones in his own mouth. Marcus had taken his own X-rays that same morning as part of his annual checkup. He compared them side by side. His hands started shaking. The mystery deepened when he brought them to his office manager, Sandra D. She went pale. "These came for you?" she asked. "Yesterday. Who brought them in?" "Nobody. They were just in the mail slot when I opened up." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those teeth. Not just that they matched his. They were better than his. No cavities. No worn enamel. Teeth from someone younger. Someone healthier. He decided to trace the film itself. Checked the batch numbers with suppliers. 3 weeks of dead ends. Then, a call came from a lab in Portland. a facility that had closed in 1998. The technician who answered was elderly, confused about how he'd reached anyone at all. "Those batch numbers," the man said quietly. "We made those films for one dentist. Just one. Dr. Harrison Webb. He was my supervisor. Brilliant man, obsessed with dental perfection." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "Did you say Webb?" "That's right. Why? Who's asking?" It's his grandson." Silence on the other line. "No," the old technician whispered. "Dr. Webb had no children. He never married. He died in 1987. Marcus hung up and went to his bathroom mirror. He opened his mouth wide and examined his teeth in the light. In the reflection, for just a moment, he could have sworn he saw someone else's face behind his own. The same face, but older. And decaying. The X-rays kept arriving after that. One every week. Each set showing teeth more perfect than before. Each set accompanied by a small gift. A toothbrush with his initials carved into the handle. A bottle of mouthwash he'd never seen before. A dental mirror that reflected nothing when he looked at it. Then came the photograph. It showed a dental office from the 1950s. Black and white. On the wall was a framed degree, Dr. Harrison Webb, DDS, and in the background, barely visible, was a figure in a white coat. The face was blurred, intentionally, Marcus suspected, but the smile was unmistakable. It was his smile. Marcus stopped looking in mirrors. He stopped eating. His teeth began to fall out on their own, bloodlessly, like they were leaving him. Each one that fell was replaced by a new tooth overnight. Perfect. Impossibly perfect. The teeth of someone else entirely. When his colleagues finally forced him to see a specialist, the dentist gasped. "These teeth, they're not human," the man said. "The enamel composition is all wrong. It's like they're made of something else entirely." The last anyone saw of Dr. Marcus Webb, he was smiling wider than humanly possible. His teeth were perfect. Absolutely flawless. But behind those teeth, something was looking out. Something with his face, but not his eyes. They found his office empty last Tuesday. The mail slot was still there. And this time, it held X-rays for someone named Michael Webb, age 34. Lives in Seattle.